Biden is saying he's supports revoking 230 as well. That can't be true. Wait, is that true? That can't be true. Revoking safe harbor protections. Hold on, wait. Let's see where I am at the Bernie or bust after I'm reading this article, okay? Hold on. We'll see how I am. In a statement responding to the order, the campaign spokesperson said it will not be the position of any future Biden administration that the First Amendment means private companies must provide a venue for the amplification of the president's falsehoods. What is going on right now? Section 230 isn't about, like, the rules for which private companies host falsehoods that are posted on them. It's about safe harbor protections. Why are they pretending that 230 has anything to do with that? No, that's no, that's not right. Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, one of the most valuable tools for protecting freedom of expression and innovation on the internet. It says that no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. That has nothing to do with posting misinformation. It's about culpability for the posting of copyrighted content on your platform. It is not, there's no, what's going on? Why would Biden lie about this? Trump lies about everything. Why would the Biden administration buy into this? Did he just not read it? The former vice president maintains his position that the law should be revoked, and he would seek to propose legislation that would hold social media companies accountable for knowingly platforming falsehoods. That doesn't have anything to do with Section 230. These aren't relevant. Freeing internet service, internet hosting, media hosting companies from legal culpability for the posting of copyrighted content on their platform has nothing to do with truth or with allowing them to host untrue things. What? It should be revoked because it's not merely an internet company, it's propagating falsehoods they know to be false. What does it have to do with... Whoa, I'm so confused. It is relevant. 230 also covers libel, fraud, and misinformation posted by users. Yeah, but only insofar as it's not holding the media companies legally responsible for that which is posted there. You could have Section 230, but then also have a separate provision that that deals with misinformation. This is only about, guys, do you have any idea how bad it would be if Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube could be sued for allowing YouTube videos, tweets, or Facebook posts that are untrue to be posted on their platform? Can you imagine if I post out like, lol, blank person is a rapist pedophile, and then fucking YouTube gets sued for it? You could like loosen protections to make it so I could be sued for it, but there's literally no chance of a private platform being able to moderate their content to that extent. It's not possible. It can't be done, not with platforms of this size. Geez, I don't really know what to do about this. When are you making a backup PeerTube channel? I mean, that would also be... Free Nigel Farage, he got banned in YouTube chat? Email me. Watch as you play. The DNC didn't rig the voting machines to rat fuck Bernard. That's not what happened to Bernie Sanders. We don't need to be that conspiratorial. I wonder if this is just like dumb bullshit. I wonder if, hold on. I'm pretty sure revoking 230 wouldn't make online platforms liable for copyright infringing content posted by users. I think that's covered by separate laws like the Online Copyright Infringement Liability Limitation Act. Don't both of them work to create the safe harbor protections? Oh, is this true? I thought that Section 230 included, okay, shall be treated as the publisher or speaker for any information. In other words, online intermediaries that host or republish speech are protected against a range of laws that might otherwise be used to hold them legally responsible for what others say or do. So, okay, these laws have overlap then. This is the Communications Decency Act, and this is the Online Copyright Infringement Liability Limitation Act. But they overlap, because both of them free these media hosting companies online from legal responsibility. Do we have any lawyers in chat? One is for ISPs, the other is for platforms? Is this only for ISPs? No, this just says interactive computer service. Do we have any lawyers in my community? Number 230 is for platforms? Well, that's what matters. Okay, yeah, this is for online service providers and internet service providers and other online intermediaries. Yeah, okay. I'm not big enough to talk with Legal Eagle about this. Section 230 was developed in response to a pair of lawsuits against internet service providers in the 1990s. Riley Grace Rochong is a lawyer, leftist, and smaller than you? Yeah, okay, but are they here right now? This paragraph explains it? Okay, hold on. Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which was passed in 1996, says an interactive computer service can't be treated as a publisher or speaker of third-party content. This protects websites from lawsuits if a user posts something illegal, although there are exceptions for copyright violations, sex work-related material, and violations of federal criminal law. This sex work one is fairly new. This actually fucked over a lot of sex workers online, which is why Patreon no longer supports people who make their money off of posting nudes or whatever, or drawing porn. It's increasingly controversial and frequently misinterpreted, however. Critics argue its broad protections let powerful companies ignore real harm to users. On the other hand, some lawmakers incorrectly claim it only protects neutral platforms, a term that's irrelevant to the law. Yeah, a lot of conservatives will say this, like neutral as opposed to biased. It's not true. There's no distinction. What's the relationship between Sector 230 and the First Amendment? In August 2019, Donald Trump reportedly drafted an executive order that would require the FCC to develop rules that could limit Section 230 protections. Met with confusion from regulators and legal experts, the White House seemed to lose interest in the order. What a fucking moron, dude. Every time Trump tries to do something, nobody knows how to react to it because he has no idea how to fucking work within our system. Thank God he's stupid. Yeah, here's the sex work one. In 2018, Trump signed into law the Allow States and Victims to Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act, a bill that purports to fight sex trafficking by reducing legal protections for online platforms. Didn't actually do that. It just kicked a fuck ton of sex workers off the internet. FOSTA carves out a new exemption to Section 230, says it doesn't apply to civil and criminal charges of sex trafficking or to conduct that promotes or facilitates prostitution. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, conducts to promote or facilitate prostitution. The rule applies retroactively to sites that violate it. I guess my main concern is, how could you edit Section 230 in such a way as to meet the political agenda of the Democrats without getting rid of the safe harbor protections? Are these just overlapping laws and this will apply no matter what? Knowledge of infringing material. The OSP must not have actual knowledge that it is hosting infringing material or be aware of facts or circumstances from which infringing activity is apparent. So what does online service provider include? Does that include only ISPs or does that also include stuff like YouTube? can be an ISP, an email provider, a news provider, an entertainment provider, a search engine. Okay, so this applies to everything. Okay, so safe harbor protections continue to exist even in the absence of Section 230. I guess my main curiosity then is, what is Section 230 protecting that isn't already being protected by the Online Copyright Infringement Liability Limitation Act? What a name. So that's good. Okay, I'm not as worried now. No provider or user of any interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. But if that's the case, so if you're not being treated as the publisher, that means you're not legally culpable for the... Section 230 is more than copyright? Okay. So if copyright is still being protected by the DMCA, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act system, or legislation, and then we just have non-copyright stuff, what are we referring to with non-copyright stuff? Hate speech, misinformation, anything regarding the law? Yeah. So basically anything else, like anything that fits under the law that isn't actually relevant to copyright. Fuck, this is so interesting. Fuck, I wish I had known more about this when I did this section earlier. I feel kind of irresponsible now. I have to publish this section now as well. This section on the Section 230. Fuck, that's my bad. That was irresponsible of me. Is this going to be a longer stream than usual? I don't fucking know. Okay, so this is Section 230. Okay, here we go. This is Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. So I'm interested. If this was revoked, what case law? Okay, here we go. Excuse me. Defamatory information. Immunity was upheld against claims that AOL unreasonably delayed in removing defamatory messages posted by third party, failed to post retractions, and failed to screen for similar postings. But that's the way it should be. Do you really want people to be able to sue AOL because they didn't quickly enough ban people who were posting defamatory messages? The court upheld AOL's immunity from liability for defamation. AOL's agreement with the contractor allowed AOL to modify or remove such content that did not make AOL the information content provider because the content was created by an independent contractor. The court upheld an internet dating service provider from liability stemming from a third-party submission of a false profile. Holy shit, somebody tried to sue a dating site because a third party posted a fake profile? Somebody got catfished and they were like, all right, time to sue the fucking company. Is this really what we want to happen? Is this okay? Yeah, imagine being that fucking mad, dude. Imagine being that fucking mad. Imagine going on Tinder and finding a cutie pie, but then you see her in person and she's 12 pounds heavier than she said, so you sue Tinder or something. Holy shit. Immunity was upheld for a website operator for distributing an email to a listserv where the plaintiff claimed the email was defamatory. Yeah, you can't sue a website operator for distributing an email that's defamatory. I don't know what a listserv is. The court upheld immunity for AOL against allegations of negligence. Immunity was upheld for an individual internet user from liability for replication of defamatory statements to a listserv. What is a listserv? What is this ancient fucking term? Email list management software, electronic mailing list. It's just a mailing list? Why not just call it a mailing list? It wasn't catfishing, it was the person whose identity was being stolen that sued. Ah, gotcha. Well, but yeah, you can't hold... them accountable for that. Wait, hold on. Here we go. The court rejected the defendant's motion to dismiss on grounds of Section 230 immunity, ruling that the plaintiff's allegations that the defendants wrote disparaging reporting titles and headings and themselves wrote disparaging editorial messages about the plaintiff rendered them information content providers. The website, Bad Business Bureau, allowed users to upload reports containing complaints about businesses they have dealt with. So the defendant's claim was the motion was rejected. Well, it rejected the defendant's motion to dismiss, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the ruling wasn't in their favor. Here we go. The court rejected immunity and found the defendant was an information content provider under Section 230, using much the same reasoning as the MCW case. The court rejected immunity for the defendant when failing to uphold a promissory estoppel claim, prevent or stop a person from making assertions or from going back on their word. Okay. Related to third-party content that they were otherwise immune from. In this case, Yahoo had promised to remove nude photos of the plaintiff placed maliciously on the site by an ex-partner, but had failed to do so. When the Ninth Circuit ultimately dismissed the case, since Yahoo would not have been liable for the photos under Section 230, their promissory estoppel made them a publisher or speaker under 230. So the court rejected the immunity, but still didn't rule in favor of the others. And then we have... So that's for defamatory information. This is for false information, sexually explicit content in minors, discriminatory housing ads, threats. Interesting. So it seems like depending on how it's done, the removal of Section 230 could allow for a much greater degree of legal culpability on the part of internet content hosts with regards to illegal or unsavory behavior on the part of the people who post to that. Interesting. How do I feel about this? 99% of the time, I would say that this is incredibly dangerous. If Trump revoked Section 230, then he could literally start implementing laws that would allow for YouTube to be sued if they keep information up that criticizes Trump. That sounds incredibly scary. What if Trump started suing YouTube every single time YouTube allowed a video to come up that got big and criticized him? Bastiat, can you come on right now? Sure, cool. Are you in the Discord? Or do I have you as a friend? Wait, we have each other as friends. Why am I asking? Hold on. Let me clarify this. This is very important to the future of my job. I need to know.
Hey, you there?
Hey there, Bastiat. How you doing?
Doing pretty well. How are you doing today?
Doing great. Lovely to hear your voice as always. Can I ask you a few questions?
Yeah. I was actually just about to. I'm not sure if they're in here. I was just about to go for a run because I'm trying to beat my potato-shaped body into something worth.
I've seen your tweets. Yeah, you're coming along.
Thank you. And somebody by the name of Latoya Jones tweeted at me and said, "Can you make a surprise appearance on Vosh, having legal discussion over Section 230 repeal and overlapping laws?" So thank you, Latoya Jones, for the tip on that.
Thank you, Latoya Jones. Yeah, I would. I'm going over this. I'm a little bit concerned about the future of my career, and I'm very interested in your opinion on some things.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah, we went over that executive order with that he put out last night, and I guess I'll just say I think it's pretty terrible. Oh, and for anybody who's listening, I'm an attorney. I don't have any particular specialization in this field of law. My specialization is in corporate law, but I like to dabble in freedom of expression because it's something that's very near and dear to me. So take it for what it's worth.
Yeah, I saw your debates with Destiny. I think that you value free speech quite a bit. Couldn't impugn you for that.
Yeah, and this executive order, I don't know how much force it's going to have on its own.
Wait, can I ask a few presumptuous questions before we get to that?
Sure.
So I saw the actual language of the executive order. I'm not a lawyer. It seemed pathetic to me. It didn't actually outline anything in particular. It genuinely just seemed like a longer tweet that he put out. I don't know how much action is going to be taken from that. But what I'm really concerned about is that it seems like Biden and Trump are both interested in the repeal or at least
Yep.
the amendment of Section 230. Initially, I thought this meant getting rid of safe harbor protections, which would obviously be basically the death of the internet as we know it. But it turns out, now I understand, of course, that while the DMCA protections and Section 230 have like an overlap, they don't mean the same thing. So copyright will still be protected. But with regards to Section 230, if Trump repealed it, does that literally mean that he could just start suing Twitter anytime like a big tweet thread that calls him like a dummy gets big?
Well. So first of all, of course, he'd have to, he'd need Congress to help him with that. But the big part of Section 230 that is so important, especially, is Section C. I just dropped a link to it in chat if anybody wants to check it out.
I'll take a look.
Cornell.edu. If you scroll down to that, you can see that there's a rule there that says no provider, or there's text there that says in the rule, no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be treated as the publisher or speaker of any information provided by another information content provider. So if somebody in your chat says something absolutely reprehensible, well, you're not responsible for that. The platform you're on is not responsible for that. And then importantly, on top of that, Part 2 of Section C says that no provider or user of an interactive computer service shall be held liable on account of action voluntarily taken in good faith to restrict access to or availability of material that the provider or user considers to be, and then there's a whole laundry list of words, including excessively violent, obscene, otherwise objectionable, and then the important qualifier, whether or not such material is constitutionally protected. So that's why you get to censor stuff on your platform, even if, and censor really isn't the right word since it's not the government doing it.
Right.
But this is why you get to delete comments, do all that kind of stuff. Even though if those comments stay up, that's still not liability for you. But you nevertheless, as somebody managing a platform, have to keep that platform viable, you moderate it somewhat, because if you've got an unpleasant platform where people are, for example, to go right away to the extremes, dropping anti-Semitic slurs all the time, well, if you kind of tolerate that on top of any moral questions, most people probably just start to leave. So the rule recognizes that you have a right to moderate your platform, that it's an important thing to do to keep your platform viable, but it does protect you from liability for the things that other people say on your platform.
So simultaneously, the removal of Section 230 would open everyone up to lawsuits, or everyone who could be held accountable for it, at least, to lawsuits concerning the publication of content on their respective platforms. But it also means that it would be, without that, incredibly difficult to ban people otherwise. In a way, like the only mechanism for removing content would be through through litigation, right?
I don't know that it would. I don't know that it would keep you still from editing your platform. I guess it would depend on how it was done. But it would strip you of that important protection that comes with allowing other people to speak on your platform. And then, I guess at that point, you'd either have to get super quick on bans, or probably more likely, you just have to really start controlling who uses your platform. Well, I mean, because if you think about it, the point of the law, right, is to make it so that other people can participate on your platform and you don't have to vet every single thing they say because you're not responsible for it, right? So it's really important in that sense. And there's an important thing to think about here too. What President Trump is so upset about that Twitter did. What they did was they posted that little notice on his tweet about mail-in votes, right? Where they said, hey, get the facts on mail-in ballots, right? Well, they're certainly liable for the things that they say on their platform, right? Now, he'd still probably lose in any kind of lawsuit on that, because that's protected speech. It's not defamatory in any way. It's an obvious point of disagreement. But for him to get so outraged about it is a whole other issue. But in any event, what he's seeking through the repeal of Section 230 is basically, I think, to make it much more difficult to express views on the internet generally. So,
yeah. So in a practical sense, what would happen if it was removed?
I don't know how YouTube, like how a platform like YouTube survives if they're responsible for everything that's posted on their website. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, maybe they would transform, like for example, I don't know how they could have people talk about politics on YouTube.
It'd be
I mean, it
it'd
seems
be
like it'd be
fucking
very difficult,
impossible. Yeah.
right? You could still probably have maybe they could cultivate their in-house content and have their kind of, I don't know, somebody like those big streamers are not streamers, big content creators who don't really, they just blow things up or, check out this meal I'm eating or whatever, I guess that kind of content would still have a home, but something that would be objectionable, something that might, something where people, discuss ideas that are the least bit controversial. I don't know. I don't know that they'd be willing to host that kind of stuff, given that they'd be liable for it.
So you would agree, like, this is potentially horrifying if it actually.
Yes.
Do you think? Oh, sorry.
And it's worth remembering that as much as I want Joe Biden to win, Joe Biden has also expressed.
That's what I was going to ask. Is there a positive take on this? Because I do try to guide my people, I guess, towards responsible electoral decisions. With regards to Joe Biden, my understanding would be, just because the Democratic Party is a little bit less like sociopathically incompetent than the Republican Party, there would probably be a better or more reasonable plan and measure. Can you think of a good way to amend 230, or is this only bad?
Well, if I were going to amend it, I would want to, I don't know. Like it feels all bad to me. Because I think that the way the internet works now is actually pretty good. I really don't understand the frustration with Section 230 unless you're upset that your views, for whatever reason, don't have traction. Like, I understand why you're upset with Section 230 if, for example, you're a fascist, or if you are the type who likes to meme about, killing the rich, because that's something that might get you banned. Pretty often, especially if you're like an Alex Jones. I understand why you're frustrated by the fact that these people can moderate your content, right? Even though they enjoy the protections of not being responsible for it in the first place. But it's worth thinking about. At the end of the day, I don't know how these platforms remain viable if they can't do that. Like, if you can't drive off kooks and violent extremists from your platform, I think people just stop using your platform. Like, how do you raise advertising revenue, for example? And this is irrespective of what you think about the higher level. I imagine, like, you, for example, would have some issues with the fact that our media is driven by advertising dollars. But if you look at what it is today, where these platforms ultimately have to sell ads to make money, I mean, whoever is running these ads, they don't want to run. YouTube had a huge problem, I think, a couple of years ago when that whole demonetization crisis started.
Oh, yeah.
Because they were running ads over videos that were, pretty clearly racist. And so then they reacted in the opposite fashion, right? To avoid companies pulling their ads, which a lot of them did in large fashion, right? And I think some of that has cooled down, and they've got a little better with demonetization, I've heard. But I mean, that's the kind of overreaction I think you could expect, like, except on steroids, if 230 were ever seriously repealed.
So you think 230 would lead to an immediate resurgence in extremist content, and then probably immediately after that a crackdown to prevent, like, culpability or association?
Probably. Yeah, like, I think people would just, I think you just stop making it so easy for people to participate on these platforms. Like, comments pages. I mean, what value does that have? For example, if that threatens your ability to run advertising, maybe you have a rule against any. I mean, if you can't discriminate against certain kinds of political content, like you saw as an executive order, where he's saying, yes, people are discriminating against different political opinions. Well, one way to avoid discriminating against certain political opinions is just to say no politics.
That's
right?
true.
That's another way to do that. So it's I think it's just terrible. I don't really know who would want to have this unless they are already unable to get traction for their views. Like, I get maybe somebody who has been banned everywhere except DLive.
This would only help Nazis. They're the only people stupid enough to keep getting themselves banned off YouTube. Even the most radical lefties extend themselves basically to like ACAB and no farther. We're smart enough to stay on our platforms, but they're fucking insane.
Yeah, and that's just, like I think about, my channel is pretty small by comparison, but I think about what happens when for example, when I was start out, I didn't immediately ban people who would say things like, "Well, I'm a National Socialist." I'd say, "Well, I'll argue with you for a while. Maybe I'll change your mind or something." But what actually happens is you let one in, and then there's two, and then there's four, and then there's eight, and they just start. All you can do is stomp them out. Or they ruin your platform. They drive normal people away, So it's if you can't moderate your platform, I think what you get is a few really large platforms that don't provide much in the way of participation at all. And I think the content that they have would be not particularly, not controversial at all, because why risk liability, right?
Yeah, Jesus.
So, yeah. So I think it's really dangerous. I don't think the president is gonna be able to do it. But the thing with his executive order is, even though I think you're right that it doesn't provide much in the way of, I think you're right that there's probably only so much he can do here. One thing that does, there are two things that give me pause. One, that he's calling for the FCC to promulgate regulations, which, maybe maybe they'll read it in a certain way. Like, for example, if you look at 230, in section 230, it says that when you're talking about moderating a platform, the provider of the internet computer service is not liable for action taken in, quote, good faith to restrict access to, objectionable, violent material, whatever.
Right.
Well, what is good faith exactly? Courts have evaluated that, to some degree. Maybe the FCC will try and further define good faith in some fashion. Maybe if you they'll maybe limit the maybe they'll provide some kind of limit that makes it harder to police platforms. I don't know. But the bigger thing I guess I'm worried about is the chilling effect of all of this, which is to say, if the federal government really is bearing down on these companies, maybe they just decide, you know what, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. We don't want all this federal attention. Let's just kind of do what he says. All right, just kind of let him go, let the wackos go, and just kind of ease up on trying to counter misinformation, ease up on trying to police our platforms, and just kind of basically give the extremists a little more legroom,
which would be bad.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I think it's
to clarify, like, the reason that would happen is because if they did, after the removal of 230, begin to crack down on some of the more extremist stuff, they would no longer be protected by the good faith assumption they're trying to cultivate content, and they could be. Who would sue them in that case? Would it be the people who were kicked off, or would it be like?
Well, if you got rid of 230, then if you get rid of that, then all that good faith stuff goes out because you're responsible for the things that are said on your platform. Then. That's why 230 is so important.
But wouldn't that mean they would have to get rid of all the extremism?
Yeah, I would think so.
Okay, yeah.
But they would also, I'm saying they would go over and beyond that, right? Like, I'm sure, for example, the report of the week has a home, after 230, but maybe somebody who touches politics, or who maybe talks about the president in an unflattering manner. I mean, you, for example, heard about how, I imagine you've heard that the Trump campaign has started suing people or has been threatening people with lawsuits who run ads. Let me try and find this here.
No, I remember what you're talking about. Yeah.
Suing people who are running ads. Okay, let's see. Trump campaign sues Wisconsin broadcaster over virus response ad, right? So yeah, I don't know. I mean, if they're worried about that stuff, I have no doubt that a company, especially one like Twitter that's only been profitable for 2 years, would err on the side of caution.
It is so strange that that he would lean in this direction, because it seems to me like, I mean, if his goal is to combat the censorship of conservatives, this would do so more than anything.
Yeah, I really don't understand it. But let me see. Josh Hawley. Let me see. I know you're well aware of Josh Hawley. He is kind of I guess I view him as kind of the future of this disastrous conservative movement. He's kind of like a competent Trump. I think he's working on populism here.
Unfortunate.
And let's see. I mean, I guess his idea is, as currently interpreted by courts, Section 230 treats big tech companies as passive distributors, even when they substantially transform third-party content, like Twitter did to real Donald Trump. They get to act like publishers, but without the accountability. That's a problem. But the thing is that it's ultimately something decided. There isn't this category of like publishers, and then you do one thing and you.
Oh, I've heard that. Yeah, I saw
right?
this PragerU video fucking years ago. This meaningless, asinine distinction between publisher and platform that they'd say because they ban one thing, therefore they're now legally responsible for everything else they have in their platform. It's not true.
Yeah, it's always a context-sensitive decision. I mean, message by message. Like if Twitter edits one of the president's tweets, maybe they can be held to account for that, for the message that they have created. But that doesn't mean that they therefore cannot, for example, still be immune for the messages other people post on their platform. So if you're curious about it, there's a really good thread that Justin Amash wrote up, actually, about this that you might want to just check out briefly on your stream, where he just goes over some basically frequently asked or frequently posed conservative points and then, responds to them. And I know this was good because the only response from Josh Hawley was, President Amash, how's the campaign? A little slow? Keep after it. Based on your Twitter, and you don't have any future as a lawyer. And he just, it's just the typical kind of personal attack in response to well laid out points. So
gotcha.
I think they just want to hurt these large companies because they are worried that their views aren't going to have an audience in the future.
So essentially what you're saying is if you had to take a shot, a guess, you would say that this is probably because, with regards to acceptable advertisements on public platforms and the general state of the discourse, conservatism is never going to win out over more progressive or liberal thought on these platforms because conservatives have a tendency to blow themselves up into Nazi hell, be live.
Yeah.
So if we just blow up politics in general, it's just fucking over the site. Like if we can't have the ball, nobody has the ball.
I think that's about the size of it. Yeah.
That's great. Do you think Biden's doing the same thing on his end?
I think that. Well, I'm really not sure about his. Let me see. I'm really not sure what his motivations
misinformation. That's what he keeps saying. That Zuckerberg and such can't keep allowing misinformation to spread on their platform.
I get that, but like,
isn't there a way to do that without repealing 230? There has to be a way to amend it slightly.
Yeah, they're already able. Like what I guess what he's talking about, or what you're referencing here is, could they create some kind of affirmative duty to correct misinformation? But I can't, and maybe you can. I can't think of a way to do that doesn't require just the most subjective decision making. I absolutely agree that it's a good thing. For example, when the president posted last night looting and shooting, that Twitter finally said, "Hey, you know what? That actually is an incitement to violence. So we are going to, we're gonna flag that as violence." And that, of course, is specifically, by the way, covered by 230, which includes among the content that you can restrict in good faith, that which is excessively violent. But I mean, they can't do everything. Like if you create this new obligation to correct misinformation, well, hey, I understand the good intent there, but how could you ever correct it all? I mean, it would be kind of a mini version of repealing the whole thing, I suppose.
Because it feels like you can't create a legal standard, because if you say a platform is responsible for correcting all misinformation, that's nobody could do that. That's not possible. But even then, do you start just letting them pick and choose? And if you do let them pick and choose what they think is worth amending or correcting, how do you incentivize them to do so? If you don't have a definite threshold for performing with good standard to the expectation of removing misinformation, how do you... Yeah, it doesn't seem like there's a good way to do that, at least not in like a capitalist framework, I don't think.
It's tough. Like, I think that I think it's tough because there's so much out there, and a lot of it is, I guess it's subjective, what you view to be, what you view as misinformation. But I hate to say that, but I can't think of a way. I can't think of a way that I could put it in law and then enforce it in any kind of consistent fashion that wouldn't just result in some kind of a smaller version of all of the problems we discussed that you get if you repealed the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Like ultimately, if you're responsible for all of this stuff, then how can these companies survive as rich and powerful as they are? I mean, maybe they can make it. But
Do you support
I'll
what
tell you
Jack
one other
did?
thing. What's that?
Do you support what Jack did?
Yeah, sure. I think you should be free to moderate your platform in that fashion. And I think also that to the extent he wants to post messages on his own platform in that sense, I think that's fine. The only difference is those messages are themselves not protected, because that's him creating content rather than allowing content,
Yeah.
So those messages, like if he had said something, defamatory about the president or something that was, false or fraudulent or whatever, that might be, you might have to answer for that. But
Could I ask you one question? I know I'm keeping you from your run,
sure.
but I'm curious.
No, it's all good. Yeah.
I think this is a Destiny meme, but I'm wondering, would you support, if it was possible, imagine like 10, 20 years down the line, we could create the political capital to do this, some kind of independent, bipartisan, state-funded, fact-checking team that had some limited degree of control over like the upper ends of most social media platforms, and they could like executively decide like, no, this advertisement cannot continue, this tweet has to be like have like a citation under it, like something like that,
Well,
it would be a violation I mean, it would like hamper freedom of speech to an extent, but like maybe the trade-off would be worth it.
I'll say, I guess there's a few things to say about that. I'll start off by saying no, I would not, but you might have already known that. But let me kind of lay out a little bit more about it. First of all, I don't know that it would be something you couldn't do, because provided that I guess it would be, the part where government is putting out messages is different from the part where government is saying you can't put out messages. Yeah. That part is, of course, an infringement on freedom of speech. But if the government itself, if you're imagining an agency that says, hey, you know what, actually, we are the official Department of Truth or whatever, and all the vaccines are good, and you should eat this many vegetables and, whatever, right? Whatever you're trying to correct. Just the government putting out that information. I mean, government already does that with, for example, Voice of America, Radio Free Europe, all that stuff that they're not legally permitted to broadcast in the United States because of the worry that it would become state propaganda. Yeah. You can access that. You can access their websites in the United States, but I guess I would say that to me, I think it would be about as effective as our. The comparison I can draw closest to what we've already got is our Department of Agriculture, which provides information about, hey, what is a well-balanced diet? What should you be eating for good health? And, as much as I hate to say this, I think a lot of that is driven by lobbying. A lot of that is driven, and not even unreasonable lobbying, I think. Like if, for example, the federal government is out there saying, well, the food that you produce, your food is good for people and your food is not good for people. Well, I totally understand why the people in the first category are happy with that decision and want to ensure that it goes on, despite what science may come out to correct the record. And the people in the second category who have a different opinion, right? Now the federal government is coming down on them and, they want to try and correct the record from their perspective or muddy the water. I feel like that kind of situation is unavoidable. So what I think you'd get, rather than any kind of, and I think it's unavoidable in a free society, like where people can interact and interface with their government, right? I think what you get
I completely agree with you.
Pizza,
I'm not a fucking statist after all.
Well, do you remember the whole pizza is a vegetable thing with school lunches?
Yeah, where they try to get healthy meals. They serve you that little square.
Right, and so Congress, has to evaluate which foods count for what purpose, and the decision was that pizza is actually a vegetable, and I think that's kind of the quality of truth you'd get out of out of basically a government truth department. Pizza can be classed as a vegetable. And I'm not saying that because even anybody is malicious. I just think that in the course of compromise and back and forth, that's just, that's our government. Like and I don't really know that there's a better way than that system of kind of compromise and back and forth, but I don't know that I'd want to put like objective truth.
So you'd always be in favor of a bottom-up approach. You support the right of content hosting platforms to do what they want within the purview of Section 230 to curtail their content, but at the same time you recognize that any like top-down authoritative structure on what is or is not truth is always going to end up having toxic incentives.
I mean, how could you?
No, you
like,
could. No,
if
you couldn't. No, I completely agree. I was just curious if you had like a different angle on that. I mean, like most social problems, like it has to be done like brick by brick from the ground up. You can't just like fix systemic poverty or crime. Like it has to be done by investing. And in the same way, like right now, most of the misinformation on the internet comes from conservative circles. Everything from everything concerning climate change, a lot of stuff concerning vaccines, and a fuck ton of stuff concerning the way our government is run. This tends to be propagated largely by right-wing media, but we can't ban right-wing thought. We just have to beat them in the marketplace of ideas. We just got to shout
even
louder.
Even if we decided, for example, this was something I talked with Destiny about, this question of, should you be fired or should somebody be able to fire you for your political opinions? Well, how could you decide what really is right-wing? Like, I mean, I know Mao called some of his political opponents rightists.
Goddamn right.
Is he right? I mean, was he right? Maybe. I don't know. You know what? How could you classify a lot of this stuff? I don't know that you ever could, even if everybody agreed. Yeah, you know what? We hate right wingers. Well, who's a right winger? Well, so it's.
But you supported the right of businesses to ban people or to fire people for their political opinions.
Yes, and I recognize that it's a lot easier to say, well, fire the Nazis. Fire the people who advocate for, extreme stuff that almost everybody disagrees with. But I don't know how you could ever consistently say. But you know what? If your opinion is merely that, say, the poor shouldn't get food stamps, well, that's something your employer shouldn't be able to stop you from saying. It's only when you say that the poor should be evicted from society and put into camps that then it's okay to fire you. I can't think of a way to put the standard out there. I mean, I understand though that's a kind of decision made in a situation with a huge power imbalance, but I don't know how else you can do it.
Yeah, in our society, like we don't have a right to work in the way you would expect. Like it's not an entitlement, And if a business wants to cut contact with an employee because they feel the employee's reputation is toxic to the productivity of the company, I don't think there's. I mean, maybe it's fucked up in like a capitalist, like free enterprise kind of way, but within the purview of our own society, I think that's perfectly acceptable. I think and also the idea like if you go to an interview and you're being interviewed and you're like, yeah, I like to work and so on. My greatest weakness is that I take criticism too well. And also, I think that women should be used as breeding stock and that they're basically not human and can't love. Probably wouldn't get that job. But if it turns out you run a podcast where you say the exact same shit and your employers only find out after you've been hired, I mean, it seems weird, like the threshold for your personality test ends after you're given your badge, Yeah.
So I can't really think about a way that it would. I can't think about a way that would work. But I do understand, like Destiny's point, for example, of I think people should be held liable for the things they do at work, or if we're talking about a relationship with whoever provides your housing, in the course of your your role as a tenant or whatever. I understand that desire for segmentation because what I'm proposing, I guess. I'm not really proposing it. I guess it's the status quo. I recognize that once you get knocked the fuck down, it makes it real hard to get back up.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Even if you learn your lesson, even if you decide, what, man, I was wrong. How could I be so wrong? But I can't think of any other way to address it. Certainly, at least in a free society. Now, I know in Europe they have that kind of right to be forgotten. At least in France, I'm not sure if that's.
I think that'd probably be a good thing to implement here. That seems pretty reasonable. I don't think it's healthy that you can fuck up when you're like 17 and then when you're like 82, people are still, I don't think that's right.
Yeah, I mean, so there may be something to that. I don't know the contours of it, but at the same time, I think the contours of it would really.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not a fucking lawyer, but I know. I generally agree. Hey, free speech is difficult stuff. I got to talk about how rioters are actually based in Epic. Next, I really appreciate you coming on to elucidate some of these legal issues.
And folks, one more thing, I just got to say this.
Please shout yourself out.
It's not my field of expertise. So if you come across a different opinion, check out Section 230 itself and read it and analyze it yourself. And there's a link right there. if you've got a different opinion. Check me out at twitch.tv/BASTIET. I see the links in the chat. Thank you so much, Vosh. I appreciate it.
Of course. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy your run.
All right. Take care.
Take care. All right, cool.